Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The gun pressed against Julian's temple was cold, but the hand holding it was burning hot, a feverish, possessive heat that made his skin prickle. You played a dangerous game, little bird. A voice growled, low and vibrating with betrayed fury. Before Julian could answer, a second voice, smooth as velvet dipped in poison, cut through the tension of the penthouse suite. Put the weapon down, Ryler. If anyone gets to break him, it will be me. Then, the sound of a safety clicking off from the doorway announced the third player. None of you own him, the third man stated, his tone freezing the air in the room. He belongs to the debt, he owes me. Julian closed his eyes, the metallic taste of blood in his mouth, and let out a shaky, hysterical laugh. He had wanted a way out of poverty. Instead, he had courted death in triplicate. Julian Vane was never meant to survive the winter of his 24th year. In the sprawling, neon-drenched metropolis of Oakhaven, the divide between the elite and the destitute was not just a gap. It was a chasm filled with barbed wire. Julian, once the scion of a respected family now ruined by his father's gambling addiction, had inherited nothing but a mountain of debt and a surname that was mud in social circles. The debt collectors were not the kind who sent letters. They sent men with hammers. Julian needed a miracle. Or, more accurately, he needed a shield. In Oakhaven, a shield came in the form of a patron, a high-status individual who provided financial immunity in exchange for companionship, loyalty, or darker services. The streets called them sugar daddies, but in the high towers of the city, they were warlords of industry. Most people prayed for one. Julian, driven by a desperate, calculating madness, decided he needed three. It was a suicidal plan. The three most powerful men in Oakhaven were rivals, their territories carved out in blood and ink. To court one was to make enemies of the other two. To court all three was to dance on the edge of a razor. But Julian was a profiler by trade, a man who analyzed psychological weaknesses for corporate espionage. He didn't have looks that stopped traffic, though his porcelain skin and haunted, violet eyes had a certain tragic beauty. No, his weapon was his mind. He knew exactly what these men lacked. The first target was Cassius Thorne. Cassius was the CEO of Thorne Heavy Industries. He was a man of steel and glass, as cold as the skyscrapers he built. He didn't need sex. He could buy bodies by the dozen. He needed order. Julian orchestrated their meeting with precision. He infiltrated a charity gala as a server, waiting for the moment Cassius retreated to the balcony to escape the vapid chatter of socialites. Julian didn't approach him with flirtation. He approached him with a correction. "Your tie is crooked, Mr. Thorne," Julian said, his voice steady despite his heart hammering against his ribs. "And your merger with the Kincaid Group is a mistake. They're cooking their books." Cassius turned, his gaze sharp enough to cut diamond. He was a towering figure, broad-shouldered in a midnight blue tuxedo, with silver-rimmed glasses that hid predatory gray eyes. "Excuse me. You crave efficiency," Julian continued, stepping into the lion's den. "Kincaid is inefficient. I can prove it in 5 minutes. If I'm wrong, you can throw me off this balcony." It was the audacity that hooked him. Cassius was surrounded by yes-men. Julian offered him the truth, a brutal, unvarnished commodity. That night, Julian didn't leave with a tip. He left with a platinum card and a position as Cassius's private consultant. But money wasn't enough to pay off the syndicate hunting Julian. He needed physical protection. Enter Target 2, Ryler, the wolf, Kalen. If Cassius was the cold intellect of the city, Ryler was its boiling blood. He ran the underground, the casinos, the fighting pits, the red light districts. He was a beast of a man, scarred, tattooed, and radiating a chaotic violence that terrified everyone. Everyone except Julian. Julian found him in the VIP section of the brutal, iron pit, fighting arena. Ryler was bored, swirling whiskey in a glass, watching two men batter each other. Julian slid into the booth uninvited. The guards moved to intercept, but Ryler held up a hand, intrigued by the frail-looking man who dared to sit beside a killer. "You look like you're waiting to die," Ryler sneered, his voice a rough gravel. He leaned in, smelling of expensive tobacco and danger. "Are you lost, princess?" "I'm not lost," Julian replied, looking Ryler dead in the eyes. "I'm bored. Just like you." Ryler laughed, a dark, booming sound. "And you think you can entertain me? I think you're surrounded by people who fear you," Julian said softly. He reached out, his fingers trembling slightly, and took the glass from Ryler's hand, taking a sip. It was an act of supreme disrespect and intimacy. "I don't fear you, Ryler. I pity you. It must be lonely at the top of the food chain." Ryler's eyes narrowed, his pupils dilating. He grabbed Julian's chin, his grip bruising. "Careful. I bite." "I'm counting on it," Julian whispered. Ryler didn't want a consultant. He wanted a challenge. He wanted something fragile that refused to break. Julian became his pet, a fixture at the underground clubs, protected by the Wolf's personal guard. Ryler paid Julian's immediate debts just to keep him around, fascinated by the boy who would critique his fighting form while sipping vintage wine. The third target was the most dangerous of all, Valerius St. Cloud. Valerius was old money. He was an aristocrat, a diplomat, a patron of the arts. He was beautiful in an ethereal, terrifying way, with long blonde hair and a smile that hit 1,000 daggers. He didn't want order like Cassius, nor chaos like Ryler. He wanted a muse. He wanted a soul. Julian met him at an art auction. Valerius was bidding on a cursed painting, a dark, swirling abstract piece. "It's a forgery," Julian murmured, standing just behind Valerius's shoulder. Valerius didn't turn. "Is it now? And how would a commoner know?" "The brushstrokes are too hesitant for the original artist's manic phase," Julian analyzed, his voice taking on a scholarly, passionate tone. "The artist was losing his mind when he painted the original. This was painted by someone sane. It lacks the tragedy." Valerius turned then, his blue eyes sparkling with delight. "And you understand tragedy, do you?" "I live it," Julian said simply. Valerius was captivated. He saw Julian not as a tool or a challenge, but as a piece of art to be collected and curated. He showered Julian with gifts, rare books, bespoke suits, access to the highest echelons of society. In exchange, Julian spent evenings in Valerius's library, reading aloud, debating philosophy, becoming the intellectual equal Valerius had starved for. For 3 months, Julian juggled fire. He was the efficient secretary by day for Cassius, the thrill-seeking lover by night for Ryler, and the soulful companion on weekends for Valerius. He used the money from Cassius to pay the interest, the protection from Ryler to keep the sharks at bay, and the social standing from Valerius to wash the stain from his family name. He was exhausted. He was terrified. And, worst of all, he was falling for them. He fell for the way Cassius would silently place a coat over his shoulders when he worked late, the ice in his eyes melting for just a second. He fell for the way Ryler would stand in front of him whenever danger approached, a human wall of protective rage. He fell for the way Valerius listened to him, really listened, as if Julian's words were gospel. But a house of cards built in a hurricane cannot stand. The collapse began with a simple scheduling error. The Grand Solstice Ball, the biggest event of the year. All 3 men were attending. Julian, arrogant in his success, thought he could navigate the room, spending time with each without the others noticing. He was wrong. It happened in the center of the ballroom. Julian was dancing with Valerius, a slow, elegant waltz. He felt eyes on him. He looked up to the balcony to see Cassius staring down, his expression unreadable, a champagne flute shattering in his grip. At the edge of the dance floor, Ryler was pushing through the crowd, his eyes blazing with a jealousy that promised murder. Julian tried to pull away from Valerius. "I need to go." Valerius tightened his grip on Julian's waist. "You're not going anywhere, my dear. I see them looking at you. The brute and the machine. Do they know?" "Know what?" Julian gasped. "That you belong to me." Before Julian could answer, Ryler was there. He didn't care about social niceties. He shoved a duke aside and grabbed Julian's arm, yanking him from Valerius. "Get your hands off him, leech," Ryler snarled at the aristocrat. "He's coming with me." "Gentlemen." Cassius's voice cut through the noise like a whip. He had descended from the balcony, his security team flanking him. The music stopped. The crowd parted. "I believe there is a misunderstanding. Mr. Vane is my employee, and my partner. He leaves with me." The silence in the ballroom was deafening. The 3 most powerful men in Oakhaven were standing in a triangle, with Julian Vane, the ruined noble, trembling in the center. "Is this true, Julian?" Cassius asked, his voice devoid of emotion, which was worse than shouting. "Have you been whoring yourself out to my rivals?" "It's not like that," Julian pleaded, his carefully constructed mask crumbling. "I had debts." "So you sold yourself," Ryler spat, looking at Julian with a mixture of heartbreak and disgust. "I thought you were different. I thought you had a spine." "He has a spine," Valerius mused, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. "He has the spine of a viper, deceiving all of us, playing us against one another. It's quite brilliant, actually, if it wasn't so insulting." "Take him," Cassius ordered his guards. "Over my dead body," Ryler roared, drawing a concealed heavy pistol. Chaos erupted. Screams filled the air as guests scrambled. Ryler's men drew weapons. Cassius's security detail leveled submachine guns. Valerius simply snapped his fingers, and shadows seemed to detach from the walls, his personal assassins. Julian stood in the eye of the storm. He realized, with a sinking horror, that they weren't going to kill each other. They were going to tear him apart to see who got to keep the pieces. "Stop!" Julian screamed, his voice cracking. "Stop it, all of you." He didn't run. He dropped to his knees. The posture of total surrender. The three men paused. The tension was a physical weight, heavy enough to crush bones. "I did it," Julian confessed, tears streaming down his face. "I used you. I needed money. I needed protection. I needed status. I manipulated you all." He looked up, meeting their gazes one by one. "But I didn't plan on the rest. I didn't plan on admiring you, Cassius. I didn't plan on feeling safe with you, Ryler. I didn't plan on loving the way you see the world, Valerius." He bowed his head. "I am empty. I have nothing left to trade. So if you're going to kill me, do it. But don't destroy the city over a whore." Silence stretched for an eternity. Then, the sound of footsteps. Leather shoes on marble. Cassius crouched down in front of Julian. He reached out, tilting Julian's chin up. "You think you can quit? You signed a contract, Julian." "You broke my trust," Ryler growled, stepping closer, his gun lowered but not holstered. "You have a lot of work to do to earn it back." Valerius sighed, brushing a stray lock of hair from Julian's forehead. "A shared muse is better than a broken one, I suppose. And frankly, the idea of sharing you. It has a certain depraved appeal." The realization hit Julian slowly. They weren't letting him go, but they weren't killing him either. They were entering a truce. A treaty written on his skin. The flash-forward caught up to the present. They took him to the penthouse, neutral ground. The gun was no longer at his head. Ryler was pacing. Cassius was pouring drinks. Valerius was watching Julian with that terrifying, analytical gaze. "Here are the terms," Cassius said, sliding a new contract across the glass table. "Your debts are cleared. Permanently. The syndicate hunting you will be dismantled by Ryler's men tonight. Your family name will be restored by Valerius's influence." Julian blinked, stunned. "And in exchange?" "In exchange," Ryler said, dropping onto the sofa next to Julian, his heat radiating into Julian's side. "You belong to us. All of us. No more lies. No more running. You will manage my affairs," Cassius said. "You will calm Ryler's temper. You will entertain Valerius's whims." "And in the bedroom?" Valerius asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Well, let's just say you have 3 debts to service." Julian looked at them. The 3 kings of Oakhaven. They were monsters, truly. But they were his monsters. He had sought to attract them to survive, but he had ensnared himself in a trap of his own making. He looked at the contract. Then he looked at Ryler's scarred hand resting on his knee, at Cassius's intense focus, at Valerius's smirk. Julian picked up the pen. "I'm expensive," Julian murmured, a spark of his old defiance returning. Cassius smiled, a rare, genuine thing that transformed his face. "We can afford you." Julian signed. The dynamic shifted instantly. It was no longer predator and prey. It was a pack. Julian Vane had not just attracted 3 sugar daddies. He had united 3 warlords. He was the linchpin that held the city's power together. As Ryler pulled him into a rough kiss, with Valerius's hand running through his hair and Cassius watching with possessive satisfaction, Julian realized something. He hadn't just survived. He had ascended. He was no longer the beggar. He was the queen on a chessboard of kings. And that is how the desperate strategist tamed the 3 beasts of Oakhaven. If you enjoyed seeing Julian manipulate his way into the hearts of 3 dangerous men, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you sell your freedom to 3 powerful men if it meant unlimited wealth and protection, or is the price of your soul too high? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, for men, BL, yaoi, harem composition, man 1 center, slim build, violet eyes, black hair, wearing disheveled white dress shirt, kneeling on floor, looking up with defiant teary expression, blushing, man 2 left, tall muscular, scarred skin, tattoos, wild red hair, aggressive stance, holding a gun loosely, wearing leather jacket, possessive hand on man 1's shoulder, man 3 right, elegant, aristocrat, long blonde hair, blue eyes, wearing velvet suit, holding a masquerade mask, smiling manipulatively, touching man 1's face, man 4 background center, imposing CEO, silver glasses, slicked back black hair, cold expression, wearing sharp charcoal suit, adjusting tie, looming over the others. Background is a shattered luxury ballroom, glass shards on floor, dramatic spotlight on the group. Cinematic lighting, intense atmosphere, intricate details.